All right, welcome back once again. If you're watching this on YouTube, I recommend checking out my astrology website here, www.danceofthecosmos.com. Again, my name is Dan Hendricks. This is continuing our series of talking about the Grahas. Again, part 4 of this series of the Grahas. We're looking at the planetary descriptions listed in the ancient astrological text, Brihat Parasara Hora Sastra. And this is part 4.8. So the 8th planet in the natural order of the planets is that of Rahu. In this video, we're actually going to talk about Rahu and Ketu. And the reason we're going to talk about Rahu and Ketu is because in the planetary descriptions listed for Rahu, well, let's go ahead and just take a look at this real quick. Okay, you'll see here in this planetary description listed for Rahu, what it says in the text for Brihat Parasara Hora Sastra, what Parasara says, is he says, this is the description of Rahu, and similar is that of Ketu. So in other words, we have these particular descriptions for Rahu, and we also have the same particular descriptions for Ketu. So by describing one of these with Rahu, it's the same for Ketu, so I figured I would just kind of combine it into one video. So let's talk about Rahu. What do we know about Rahu? Rahu represents, new foreign places. That's what the attacking army here is. Rahu is a feminine planet, which means that it's based on needs and desires. And, with Rahu, it's very because of this darkness of Rahu, this tamasic energy of Rahu, it's really dark nature of Rahu is and he's looking down, so it's it's creating these desires that aren't really fulfillable, or they're not really understandable because of this darkness of it. But because Rahu will take us in new directions, Rahu can give us technical ability, because Rahu represents the head without a body. And so the head without a body has no reason to stop. It's just going to constantly keep coming up with new ideas and not really deal much with digesting the information. And so when you keep coming up with new ideas, this Rahu has the ability to make somebody extremely technical. I talked about this in a previous video when we were talking about the intelligence of the planets, that Rahu can make someone very technically savvy. Like if you have Rahu with Mercury, I had mentioned this could make someone very adept at using their hands in a very technical way, like a very technical artist or a sculptor, or can even make a computer programmer, in fact, because it's very much just like taking it to the next level because it doesn't have a body to weigh it down. Now, what we know about Rahu. So let's get into these descriptions of Rahu. Well, what Parashara says about Rahu and also about Ketu is that they are smoky. So when we talked about the other planets, like maybe Saturn is yellow-eyed, so it sees kind of the problems in life and represents, seeing the troubles of things. And Sun is auspicious, seeing honey yellow-eyed, so it's seeing like the sweet things to do, and Sun is sattvic, so it's seeing all these great things. Well, okay, so they're dark, tamasic, they're dark-bodied and smoky. So this whole idea is of Rahu and Ketu. So with Rahu, this represents an illusion. Rahu is a very much the planet that represents illusion, because Rahu, just being the head without a body, like the head that's processing sensory information in it, without the body of knowledge of knowing what all of that means, Rahu can think that I need to go here. Because remember, Rahu's a feminine planet. So Rahu's about like these desires. Why Rahu takes us in new directions is because there's like a desire. It's realizing that there's something that it wants to experience for itself. But it's something that's very dark. It's something it's like an illusion. Rahu can, for example, if you were to put Rahu with Mars, for example, Mars is that planet of action and the planet of wanting to achieve what it believes is its directive, and using the most logical things and going, kind of like breaking things down into a process that makes sense. You put Rahu there, which Mars is a planet that already moves fast and can already tear through things, and he's of torn form. Mars can either leave, run through some rose bushes because that's the most direct way to go about things, or maybe Mars is pushing people aside. You put Rahu with Mars, now you have this really fast moving sudden burst of energy nature that's just like it's even more force behind it, because now it's coming from a dark place of like a desire. So it's like this desire encased with this ability to move fast. So Mars with Rahu people can be somebody who's just got these extreme, can really go to extremes, because now it's putting the action of go, the action of our ability, because Mars represents our ability to take action in a direction. And then you put it with Rahu, then it's like it doesn't really know where it's going to go. And Rahu represents that technical ability of really, so Rahu, Mars people could really go off in one direction really fast and really be the type to take things to extremes. Now this can be a physical nature. So this can be someone who can be a little bit more violent. Mars is also a passionate planet. So Rahu with Mars, because Rahu represents this illusory nature, can make someone that's extremely overly passionate, a person that is overly driven, that doesn't know when to stop, basically. And so then that's kind of what the idea of the illusion of Rahu is this illusion of desire that's pulling it forward, that's going to make it go in an extremes. And that's kind of what we get when we're talking about Rahu. And that's why these extremes of Rahu, when we're talking about abilities, it can be a really technically capable person. Also, it can end up resulting in that's not always the case. But anyhow, and then Rahu, here it says forest dwelling. Well, what this means is this is another idea of extremes, basically, because this is like Rahu and Ketu are known to live in the forest. Rahu and Ketu are known to live in the forest, or the forest dwelling. It's like that's where they live because it's outside of the city. It's outside of societal norms. And that is very much the case with Rahu's desires, is these desires create illusion that is outside of the norm. That's why when you get Rahu with Mars, it's just like, look out. This person might just take these ideas, because Mars represents our opinions and the things that we believe that we need to do. It might just take these two extremes. And the reason why it's extremes is because it doesn't see things in a normal way. It sees things, it's dwelling in the forest. You know, it's like completely different. It's outside of the normal societal boundaries, because when you dwell in a city, you live your life by a certain amount of rules, and those rules are determined by the society at large. So if you don't live within those rules, then you get punished for it or whatever. But for the most part, we adhere to it. And one of those rules are getting a job and, you know, all the menial, mundane tasks of natural civilization. So Rahu and Ketu are kind of like these uncivilized planets, this energy that is outside of our normal bounds of reality. And that's definitely the case with Rahu. And then we see here that Rahu and Ketu are terrible. Wow. So what that really means is this is where we start to really understand the extremes of Rahu and Ketu. And what terrible means is that terrible just means that it's like, this is the idea of extremities. And this is the idea when we start talking about the word tamasic. And tamasic can mean the dark things in life. Tamasic can indicate things like violence. But I would say with Rahu and Ketu, it's more like representing calamities. And so if you, Rahu, for example, with Moon, where with Rahu with Moon on one aspect of that can give someone that has a lot of technical ability, right? So like I said in another video, that Rahu with Moon can make someone extremely imaginative. They can have an extremely creative imagination, come up with brand new groundbreaking ideas, you know, and it can be extremely helpful that way. But at the same time, this is someone whose mind might always be going towards the terrible calamities, always be like, their mind's always racing, because Rahu's all about, you know, he doesn't have that body. And so it's about the terrible calamities. So you put Rahu with Moon, this person might be someone who's very, sees the illusion in life and is maybe afraid of calamities or something of that nature, or looking at things that can possibly go wrong. Rahu with Moon a lot of times can represent, is like a check mark if you're looking for things of anxiety in a chart. If you see Rahu with moon, you can pretty much put a check mark there that there's a very strong indication. This is just one indication, but there's one strong indication here of anxiety, because what is anxiety but you're anxious that things are going to go wrong. That's pretty much what the idea is, because moon is about finding fulfillment with this world and adapting, and Rahu is like, it's new to the person in this. It's that karmic identity of like, this is a new thing that I'm working with in this lifetime that I'm unfamiliar with. I'm the attacking army. I'm outside of the prison's walls. I'm forest dwelling. So it's like, oh, see, it's this forest dwelling idea that can give the technical ability, but it's the forest dwelling idea of like, because the moon is just trying to adapt to its environment. You put it with Rahu, and then it feels like, oh, I just can't adapt to this situation that's there. It makes it feel a little bit incapable, and that's kind of makes everything kind of a little bit more agitated. It brings illusion to the mind and to where that I can't be able to feel this, and that's kind of the idea of the terrible nature of Rahu. Is that's how it can bring anxiety when it's with the moon. And like I said before, like Rahu with Mars, that's considered a terrible energy because it just allows you to just go in an extreme. Now, and then this idea of Vata is a very unstable foundation as well. It's bringing a Vata influence to the mind. And this is very similar to everything that I've said, where it's like Rahu with this, Rahu being Vata is that idea of just going to extremes. It's like this energy that's just here because it's air and space, and so it's going to be it's the more extreme fluctuating capacity of air and space. Because if you rapidly expand the space element, then the air is just all of a sudden moving from here to here. If you rapidly decrease it, it's like the air molecules start moving more and more. So Rahu, I would say, would be more of that expanding nature of where things just feel a little bit lost, a little bit confused. That's kind of the blackness of Rahu. And then we said Rahu is intelligent. Rahu and Ketu are both intelligent. So this is exactly what I said. It's that technical ability. So Rahu can make you, because without having a body to weigh you down, because Rahu is the head without the body, that's kind of the mythological representation of Rahu, then you're able to go to these new technical levels and heights. We've already kind of covered that. So that's kind of how we can see Rahu. Now let's look at, with the same qualities, let's look at Ketu. So Ketu is smoky, and Ketu is dark-bodied, but Ketu has no sight. Ketu is that introverting force. So whereas Rahu creates illusion, Ketu kind of represents like a mist of like, this just can't work, because Ketu is that body without the head. So the body without the head can't see the good things. It's just going to deal with what it knows how to do. And that's the introverting force of Ketu. Is it's like, I'm going to stay at home, because Ketu is that defending army that never leaves the kingdom's walls. It never goes beyond where it needs to go. And then we know that so being the illusion that Ketu represents is kind of that illusion of not being able, that I can't move beyond my own boundaries, that I'm incapable of going out there. And so it's like, I'm just going to stay within. I'm going to stay introvert. I'm going to stay in my own little box, basically. Ketu kind of represents staying in the box. Rahu represents never being inside the box and taking every single direction outside of the box. And so now that's one way to look at the smoky and dark-bodied and dark and no sight aspect of Ketu. And then we know that Ketu is so let's talk, we talked about, so Ketu is terrible also. Well, what we know with we talked about Rahu with the moon. Now let's talk about the idea of Ketu with the moon. What Ketu with the moon would mean is that, so in the past, we've always controlled our emotions, because Ketu represents that body. It's about staying contained within the box. So Ketu represents, in the past, we have had came in with a past life karma of wanting to control our emotions, not wanting to just find what's to be happy with what is in our environment, and just working with the things that we find, and staying very much like not expressing our emotions, not letting our emotions be shown, but trying to really keep those emotions kind of contained. And what we know, and why is it terrible? Because it represents the Vata nature. So what I look at with Ketu, like I talk about Rahu, like the expanding idea of space and air, which can be very much like can expand it very rapidly and in many directions. Well, Ketu is like is like the space element kind of cramming all the air particles together. And so what happens with that? Ketu can be a little bit more explosive. So if you have Ketu with moon, it's like I'm trying to encase all of my emotions. I'm trying to just stay controlled, but I know that this just isn't working. This isn't how I'm adapting. And what ends up happening with when you try and like bottle up your emotions, they tend to explode. So Ketu sometimes can indicate kind of a little bit more of an explosive nature, especially like when we're talking about Ketu with moon. These are the type of people that, like, for the most part, you'll be like, wow, nothing affects this person. They show no emotions. This person's very stoic. And then the next thing you know, this person will just sob uncontrollably for a couple days, and you're unable to console these people. And there's nothing that you can do because they've spent so much time just letting and holding on to this, their emotional nature. That's Ketu with moon. That's just one particular thing of Ketu with moon. Now, Ketu with moon also can be someone who's very intelligent as well. Not because they're going in a new direction, because they know that of which is in their system. They come up with ideas that are very much centered on what's going to help them. They're very aware of how to work with their own nature, of who they are, of like the static, stable nature of who they are. And that's kind of the intelligent nature of it. And see, the terrible part of Ketu is possibly creating that explosive nature of trying to keep everything contained. Because the thing is, when you're trying to keep something contained, it's never going to have a healthy result, basically. And when you keep everything contained, I mean, so much of our life is about going out into the world and experiencing new things. That's what we're here to do. And so since we're here to do that, Ketu is like, it's representing that aspect of life where we're holding on to a little bit too much, where we're trying to stay put, where we're kind of like afraid, because Vata represents fear. So it's like we're afraid to step out into the new things. We're afraid to show this area of our life, to venture out of our little forest dwelling. Now, when we talk about forest dwelling nature of Rahu, when we talk about Rahu as forest dwelling, it's like that was that nature to just go there. Another aspect I would think with Ketu with forest dwelling would be more about like, I'm just going to be overly simple. Because I mean, if you live in the forest, if you are dwelling in the forest, then you're just, what are you thinking about? You're thinking about food, and the next thing, like, I'm just going to stay within this area that has food in it. I'm not willing to go over here because I know what I have. I have everything I need right here. I have everything I need right here. But, what can happen is something terrible can happen. A calamity can happen that's going to pull you out of that, out of your little area of the forest. And then you're going to be terrified because you've never been out of that area of the forest where you had everything you need. And that's kind of that introverted nature of Ketu. So I hope this helps to kind of explain Rahu and Ketu. The thing to know about these is these are dark planets. These are planets that represent illusion. I'm trying to explain illusion and darkness. They're very fascinating. I'll probably make a lot more videos upon the natures of Rahu and Ketu to help to explain them. And hopefully you found this information useful, and thank you for watching, and namaste.